Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are adjusting our focus, quite literally, to look at a piece of media that landed back in June 2025. And, well, it immediately disrupted the standard romance formula in Japanese drama.
It really did.
We are talking about Depth of Field, or Hishakai Shindo.
And that's a title that does a heavy amount of lifting, as we'll get into.
It really does. Now, if you just glance at the promotional poster, you see two handsome high schoolers, a blue sky, school uniforms, and you might think, okay, standard boys love series.
Another high school romance. Seen it before.
Exactly. But we have pulled just a massive stack of reviews, character analyses from fan forums, and even some production notes on this live-action adaptation of Angel's manga. And the consensus is pretty clear. Calling this just a romance is completely missing the point.
It's reductive, really. What we're actually looking at here is more of a cinematic study of youth. It's less about the mechanics of boy meets boy and way more about the psychology of very specific and very weird time in life.
You're talking about that limbo period, that suspended animation.
Exactly, the moratorium, that feeling of being stuck between being a child and becoming an adult. It's a time that's just defined by waiting, by this sort of mental haze and a terrifying lack of definition.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to figure out how this show uses visual metaphor, photography obviously, and auditory metaphor, so music, to tell a story about trauma, about visibility, and what it actually means to truly see another person.
Right, because based on all the sources, this isn't just about falling in love, it's about coming into focus.
Ooh, I like that. So before we even touch the plot, we have to talk about the vibe, the atmosphere of this show.
Yes, we have to. The reviews are obsessed with it.
I saw phrases like dreamy artistry and cinematic gold just thrown around constantly in the source material.
And that's because the director, Ryo Kawasaki, made a very deliberate choice here. He treats this series less like a standard TV drama and more like an indie film. He leans so heavily on natural light, these huge, overpowering ocean views, and the ambient noise of, like, wind and waves.
It creates this texture that feels fleeting.
Yes.
It feels nostalgic even while you're watching it, like you're remembering something instead of just seeing it for the first time.
Precisely. And that whole visual language is crucial because our protagonist, Hayakawa, is, and I'm quoting one of your favorite forum descriptions here.
Oh, I know which one.
Teenage angst with legs.
I stand by that description. But it's a very specific flavor of angst. It's not just moodiness, it's a performance.
It is.
Yeah.
So let's unpack this dynamic because the show thrives on that whole polar opposites setup, but it subverts it pretty quickly.
Okay, so on one side you have Hayakawa Shutiro, played by Takuma Usa,
The prince.
the Mask of the Prince. To his classmates, Hayakawa is the ideal popular guy. He's cheerful, he's flirtatious, the center of gravity in any room. He's the guy everyone wants to be or be with.
But the source material is very clear. This is a defense mechanism. Internally, he's just completely hollowed out.
And we know why he's so hollow. He's not just some random student. He's a former piano prodigy.
A lapsed prodigy, yeah. He comes from this high-pressure musical family. His father's a professor, his mother's a teacher. He spent his whole childhood winning competitions, being the golden child.
But by the time we meet him, he has completely killed that identity. He refuses to even touch a piano.
Because of a betrayal. We'll get to the specifics, but the end result is this massive void in his life. And the way he tries to fill that void, it's messy.
Oh, it's very messy. The sources all note that he engages in these meaningless hookups. He's sleeping with classmates. There are rumors about the school nurse.
He's using physical intimacy to feel something, or maybe to feel nothing.
Numb himself.
Exactly. He's looking for a distraction from the silence where all that music used to be. And then you have his foil, Kano Ryohei, played by Koshu Hirano.
Who is the complete and total inverse.
In almost every single way. Kano is a senior, a little older, and his peers see him as scary or unapproachable. He's that guy in the back of the class who never talks, who always looks serious.
But that's a total misreading, right?
And a complete misreading by the other students. He's not angry. He's just incredibly stoic and observant.
He's the anchor. While Hayakawa is just flailing around trying to be everything to everyone, Kono is just watching.
Through a camera. His defining trait is his photography. He experiences the whole world through a viewfinder. He captures moments, but he doesn't really participate in them.
And this brings them to their meeting place. All the reviews highlight the school rooftop as being almost a character in itself.
The rooftop is a staple, sure, but here it serves a very specific psychological function. It's a liminal space. It's suspended between the school, which represents hierarchy, pressure, performative behavior, and the sky. The sources describe it as a sanctuary where the sea and sky blend.
A place where the rules don't apply.
Yeah.
And that's where the catalyst happens.
Right.
Hayakawa is up there. He's dropped
Yeah.
the happy guy mask because he thinks he's totally alone. He's looking miserable. And Kono just snaps a photo.
It's an invasion of privacy, technically. But when Hayakawa confronts him, Kano doesn't apologize. He just says, I took the shot because your expression was perfect.
And that's the inciting incident right there.
Yeah.
Hayakawa is so used to people looking at him and seeing the popular prints. Kano looks at him, sees the misery, and calls it perfect.
It's the first time Hayakawa is truly seen. Kano captures the reality under the performance, and that just rattles Hayakawa to his absolute core.
Now, you mentioned the moratorium earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This is where that concept really starts to kick in, isn't it?
Yes. The psychosocial moratorium, it's a concept from Erik Erikson. It's basically a delay of adult commitments, a period of exploration. And both of these boys are stuck right in it. Hayakawa is thrashing against it, trying to destroy his past self because he's terrified of the future.
And Kono is just passively drifting through it.
Right.
Observing, but not really participating.
They're both out of focus.
Which brings us to the title, Depth of Field. I know we have some photography nerds listening who are just waiting for us to define this.
Let's satisfy them. So in photography, depth of field refers to the distance between the nearest and the farthest objects in a scene that appear acceptably sharp.
Simple enough.
But aesthetically, it changes the entire story. A shallow depth of field means your subject is crisp, but the background is just a blur. A deep depth of field means everything, foreground and background, is in focus.
So if we apply that to the characters then,
Initially, they're both operating with an incredibly shallow depth of field. Hayakawa is hyper-focused on his own pain. The rest of the world is just a blur to him. Kano is focused on his viewfinder. He's detached from the reality around him.
they're isolated in their own little bubbles of focus.
Exactly. The whole narrative arc of the show is about widening that aperture. As they start to let each other in, their depth of field expands. They start to see the context, the future, and, the person standing right next to them.
That is a surprisingly elegant metaphor for a show that also features high school boys making jokes about drawing inappropriate things in notebooks.
It balances the high-minded metaphors with the crude reality of being a teenage boy. It grounds it. You kind of need the Harry Wiener jokes, as referenced in the source material, to remind us that these are still just messy, immature kids.
But the characters, they can't articulate this stuff, can they?
Right.
They don't have the vocabulary for a psychosocial moratorium.
No way. They are emotionally illiterate in that specific teenage way, so art becomes the proxy. Hayakawa has silenced his own voice by quitting the piano.
And Kono uses the camera to speak.
Right. And it creates this fascinating jealousy loop. Hayakawa sees Kono, this quiet, weird guy who is totally unashamed of his passion for photography. And Hayakawa hates his own passion because it hurt him so badly.
It's a mix of intoxication and just rage. He's drawn to Kono's clarity because he feels so completely chaotic.
Speaking of chaotic, we need to address the friction. Because reading through the forum discussions, the audience was not instantly on board with Hayakawa.
He is a difficult protagonist, especially early on.
We have to look at his villain origin story, which drops in episode 2. We find out that his so-called friends in junior high only befriended him to get access to his piano and his status.
They used him.
Explicitly. And when he found out, he just decided that his talent was a curse. He quit. He decided that if he ever showed his true self, his musical self, he would be exploited.
So he builds the fake nice guy persona, but the problem's how that trauma manifests itself toward Kono. Some of the reviews use words like predatory or toxic to describe Hayakawa in those first couple of episodes.
And it's a valid critique. There is a serious lack of boundaries. Specifically, there's that scene in episode 2 where he forces a kiss on Kono.
And in a modern context, that sets off all kinds of alarm bells.
Rightfully so. But the show frames this not as romance and not really as malice, but as pure desperation. He's testing Kono. He's self-sabotaging. It's almost like he's saying, I'm going to do the worst thing I can think of just to see if you'll still look at me.
He's trying to prove to himself that he's unlovable.
Yes, exactly. It's aggression born from self-loathing. But it's hard to watch. It really makes you question if he's redeemable.
What saves the character, and I think the whole show, really, is episode 3, the tape recorder scene. This seems to be the moment the audience pivots from, this guy is a mess, to, oh, I really want him to heal.
This is the emotional anchor of the whole series. Kano finds Hayakawa's old piano tapes. Now, based on Hayakawa's behavior, the forced kiss, the mood swings. Kono has every right to just write him off, to walk away.
But he doesn't.
He listens to the music, and he tells Hayakawa not to stop playing. He validates the talent, but more importantly, he separates the talent from its utility. He isn't asking Hayakawa to play for him or for some competition. He's just acknowledging the beauty of it.
And for Hayakawa, who has only ever been valued for what he can win or what he can provide for people, it's just earth-shattering.
It's the moment the mask cracks completely. The sources say this is when Hayakawa falls utterly in love. Because Kano didn't judge the mess, he just saw the person.
Which sets us up for the big climax of the high school timeline in episode 4, the karaoke scene.
Right.
Now, usually karaoke scenes in dramas are just, filler or comic relief.
Not here. This is Hayakawa reclaiming his identity. He sings in front of everyone. It's a public performance, yes, but the lyrics, the intensity, it's a private confession directed squarely at Kono.
He's using art to speak again.
And Kono receives it. We get that beautiful scene afterwards where Kono wipes away Hayakawa's tears. It's incredibly intimate. The fans call it perfection. They kiss. It really feels like we've reached the happy ending.
But we're only at episode 4. And if you know anything about drama, you know that happiness in episode 4 is always a trap. We hit the misunderstanding.
The infamous "Are you serious?" incident.
Oh, it's so painful because it's so realistic. Hayakawa kisses Kono. Kono, who has never dated a guy, never really even thought about it. He's just shocked. And he blurts out, "Are you serious?"
And Hayakawa, who views the entire world through his personal lens of trauma and betrayal, interprets "Are you serious?" as "You are disgusting."
He hears rejection, total rejection.
He assumes rejection to protect himself, so he ghosts Kono. He just disappears.
It's the classic break up with them before they can break up with you move. And then, bam, episode 5, we get a massive time jump. 3 years later.
This was a controversial choice, structurally. Some viewers hated losing the high school setting, but thematically, it's necessary. They had to leave the moratorium. They couldn't solve this problem as children.
And the biggest shift here is perspective. For the first 4 episodes, we are mostly inside Hayakawa's head. And then suddenly, we get Kono's internal monologue.
And we finally realize he wasn't rejecting Hayakawa at all. He was just slow.
She was buffering.
He was processing. He didn't understand the fluidity of his own sexuality. He really needed those 3 years to figure out who he was.
And he gets a guide. We have to talk about Ume.
Ume is this mentor figure Kono meets during the time skip. And Ume is vital because he gives Kono the vocabulary that he lacked in high school. He teaches him that sexuality isn't black and white, that it's okay to be attracted to a person regardless of their gender.
So Ume widens Kono's depth of field.
Exactly. He helps Kono realize that being mature includes being open to parts of yourself you didn't expect.
So now we have adult Kono, who knows what he wants, and adult Hayakawa, who is actually playing music again professionally. They reunite.
And the tension is just palpable. They've aged up. Kono has shorter hair, an earring. He looks much more confident. But there's this huge wall of 3 years of silence between them.
They are strangers who know everything about each other.
And there's a ticking clock. Because, of course, Kono's about to leave for New York to pursue photography.
Classic rush to the finale. But it forces the confrontation in episode 6.
And this is where Kono finally sheds that passive observer role. He takes the lead. He explains that his hesitation years ago wasn't rejection, and then he delivers the line that basically sums up the entire show.
I only did it because it was you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a trope we see a lot in BL, right? The "I'm not gay, I'm just in love with you" trope.
It is, but in the specific context, it lands differently. It's not about denying an identity. It's about confirming the specificity of their bond. He's saying his depth of field was shallow. He couldn't see himself with a man until Hayakawa walked into the frame.
And Hayakawa, how does he react to this news?
Well, he doesn't waste any time on philosophical debate. According to one very enthusiastic review, his response is basically, "I want 3 years worth of kisses."
Prioritizing the important things. I like it.
And significantly, Kono makes a choice. He decides to stay, or at least to delay New York. He chooses the relationship over the immediate career jump.
And they end up back on the rooftop.
Full circle. But the lighting is different. The context is different. The moratorium is over. They aren't hiding anymore. And the reviews all emphasize that the final kisses feel unscripted and healing. It's a resolution of their trauma, not just a romantic payoff.
So it does stick the landing. But looking at the critical reception, it wasn't a perfect score from everyone.
No. The biggest complaint, by far, was the runtime. It's only 6 episodes, about 30 minutes each.
That is remarkably short for a drama with this much psychological baggage.
It is. A lot of fans felt the ending was rushed. They wanted an episode 7 just to see them being happy and domestic and boring. They spent 90% of the show pining and hurting, and they only got 10% of the happiness.
The curse of the slow burn. You do all the work and you get, like, 5 minutes of payoff.
Exactly. However, the consensus is that the quality really outweighed the quantity. The acting Takuma Usa's sensitivity and Koshu Hirano's warmth just elevated the material. And again, the cinematography. It made a low-budget show feel grand.
So if we zoom out, pun intended,
Yeah.
what is the core takeaway of Depth of Field?
I think it really challenges the idea of change. In so many romance stories, love changes the protagonist. Here, love just helps them focus. Hayakawa didn't need to become a different person. He needed to accept the musician he already was. Kana didn't need a personality transplant. He just needed to widen his view to accept his own sexuality.
It's about integration, not transformation.
It's about widen your depth of field to include the parts of yourself you suppressed.
Which is a valuable lesson, whether you're a high schooler on a rooftop or, an adult listening to this on your commute.
And it leaves us with a question for you, the listener. We talked about that moratorium, that feeling of waiting for your life to really start.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how many of us are stuck in a moratorium right now, just going through the motions, waiting for someone or something to snap a picture and bring us back into focus?
That is uncomfortably real. Something to think about today. Whether you're waiting for a photographer or just a moment of clarity, hopefully you find your focus. Thanks for diving in with us on Depth of Field. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.